Rutgers coming off of a pretty solid season in 2024. What does the projection look like in 2025? We're going to give you that, and we're going to break down this 2025 schedule for the Scarlet Knights. Rutgers benefited from a pretty easy schedule in 2024, but not so much in 2025. This thing is brutal, and here is the full schedule. We'll start with the non-conference, which is not too bad. They've got Ohio, Miami of Ohio, and Norfolk State. So you've got an FCS opponent, and you got two MAC teams. But you got two of the top teams from last year in the MAC. So these are not going to be easy wins for Rutgers, in my opinion. Again, you're talking about quality teams coming out of the MAC. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't done a lot of research on who's coming back for these two teams, but they traditionally are near the top of the MAC, and I would expect them to be there again next year. So a couple of tricky games, very winnable games. Rutgers should definitely be a favorite in all three of these games, but I would say guaranteed wins. Then we go to the home and away. So who do they play home and away in the Big Ten? Well, it's Iowa, Oregon, Maryland, and Penn State at home. And then on the road, it's Minnesota, Washington, Purdue, Illinois, and Ohio State. That road schedule is not horrible, but if you just look all in all at their opponents this year in the Big Ten, I mean, it's night and day from what they had last year. And Rutgers really, for a long time, they had to deal with being in the Big Ten East and having to play Michigan and Ohio State and Purdue every year, and their schedules were always tough. Well, they avoided a lot of those teams. They've actually avoided all of those teams. I can't remember from last year. Actually, let's just look at it. So this is who they lost on the schedule and who they added on the schedule. And as you can see, they removed Michigan State, Nebraska, UCLA, USC, and Wisconsin. 5 teams that are, some of them are pretty decent, but no powerhouse teams, at least from last season. None of these teams finished, I would say, in the top 5 or 6 in the Big Ten. But look at who they added. Iowa, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Purdue. Absolutely brutal. Obviously, Purdue, you like adding them. That's not an issue. But Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State, maybe the top 3 teams in the Big Ten. Are you kidding me? Yeah, they avoided them all last year, but this year they are definitely going to have a tough one. So this is a really tough schedule. And then Iowa, who's traditionally one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the Big Ten, and I think they have a chance to be pretty good this year. So this is a much, much tougher schedule for Rutgers. Let's just look at it here game by game. So they'll open up with Ohio on August 30th. Then they play Miami of Ohio on September 6th. And then it's Norfolk State on September 13th. So they have a really good shot to get off to a 3-0 start. And I would say that it's even possible for them to get off to a 5-0 start because they get Iowa at home. That I think will be a winnable game, but it'll be a tough one. And then Minnesota on the road, another tough one. But again, Rutgers could possibly win those 2 games or at least maybe split those 2 games. So a 4-1, 5-0 start is possible. It'll be tough, but it's possible. 3-2 maybe a little bit more likely. But then you get into the rest of the schedule. After that first bye week, they've got Washington on the road, then Oregon, then back-to-back road games with Purdue and Illinois, and back home for Maryland. So you look at that stretch, the only really tough team is Oregon, but playing Illinois on the road will be very, very tough. This is an Illinois team that figures to be in the top 25 preseason. Washington, I think, is another team that's getting better, and that one could be tough. Luckily, they get the bye week before having to go out west. Yeah, 3 road games out of those 5 games. I would say Washington, Oregon, and Illinois will be very tough games. Now, Purdue and Maryland, very winnable games. I think Purdue has a real shot in those 2 games. So if they can get off to a realistically, 4-1 start and then win those 2 games, then they make it to a bowl game, which I think has got to be the goal for Rutgers. With this schedule, just get to a bowl game and you've had a successful season. Because look, after that second bye week, they get Ohio State and Penn State. So don't really expect them to win either one of those games. They'll play Ohio State on the road and then Penn State at home. A very, very tough couple of games there to close things out. So again, first 5 games, you got to get to 4-1 in my opinion. At least 3-2. If they only get to 3-2 though, then they're going to have to win a game at Illinois or at Washington, something like that, to get them to a bowl game. Again, I just think it's going to be tough for this team just to get to a bowl game with this schedule. And you see where it stacks up with the other teams in the Big Ten. You can see this is one of the toughest schedules in the Big Ten based off of how these teams performed last season. Their winning percentage in 2024, again, Rutgers 2025 opponents, 46-35, a 57% winning percentage. That is near the top, only behind Wisconsin and Iowa. And keep in mind, this includes Purdue. So they've got a Purdue team that was awful last year. Let's just say you replace Purdue with an average team, then you've got 4 or 5 more wins in this total, and then they've got possibly the toughest conference schedule in the Big Ten. So you like having Rutgers on there, or having Purdue on there, I should say. That brings that number down a little bit. But for Rutgers, it's still going to be a very, very tough schedule in 2025. Before we get to the projected record, just want to let all of you know we do have a Rutgers channel. We do have a Rutgers show on that channel, other content throughout the week. So if you're a Rutgers fan, check it out, subscribe. There'll be a link down in the description below, and you should also see one pop up on your screen. So a much tougher schedule for Rutgers in 2025. What does that mean for their projection? Well, let's look back at the last 4 seasons when we've been doing these projections. And we'll go to 2021. They were projected to go 6-6. They went 5-7. In 2022, projected to go 5-7. They went 4-8. And then in 2023, projected to go 4-8. They went 6-6. So they did beat the projection that year. And then last season, were projected to go 7-5. They went 7-5. A big reason why that projection was that high was because of the schedule and how favorable it was. Not so much the case this year. But yeah, again, you look at where they've been throughout these last 4 seasons. Couple of years they were down 1 game. They missed the projection by 1 game, and then in 2023 they were 2 games over. But last year the projection was right on the money. And this is not a prediction. I don't do predictions until after spring practice, until after Memorial Day. That's usually when we start doing those. This is simply a projected record based off of the formula that we created, and it's all based off of our tier rankings. And Rutgers is a tier 4 team, I believe. So that's where they come in, and are actually tier 5. So Rutgers in tier 5, and just for reference, there are 6 tiers in the Power 4. So they are 1 tier away from that bottom tier. And maybe that's a little low. Maybe I'm underrating this team, but I look at all the losses on defense and just the fact that Rutgers traditionally not a powerhouse team. So yeah, keep that in mind. Maybe I'm underrating them a little bit. Maybe the projection will come out a little bit low. But here's the schedule. This is the scale that we use. As you can see here, if they play a team in the same tier, it'll be a 50-50 game. If they play a team in a tier below them, that drops it to a 61 to 70% game. But if that game's on the road, then it's a 50-50 game. That's kind of the way this works. We kind of look at it in terms of point spreads. This is not how the formula was created, but it usually works out pretty well this way. So the 40 to 60% games, those are the games where the spreads more than likely are going to be 3, 4, 5 points. 61 to 70, we're talking about spreads near a touchdown. 6, 7, 8, 9. 71 to 80 games where the point spread will be double digits, and then over 80, those are pretty much guaranteed wins. Games where the point spread should be 20 or more. And so I think you've really got 1 guaranteed win, 1 easy win. That's Norfolk State. I think Rutgers should be able to take care of business with no problems there. But then you look at a couple of MAC opponents. I put them in the blue because these are teams that have finished near the top of the MAC almost every year. They were at the top last year. These will not be easy wins. I think Rutgers will be double-digit favorites in these games, but not 20, not even probably, I would say around 14 maybe. That's probably about where the point spread will be for these 2 games. These are quality teams out of the MAC, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Rutgers was to lose one of these 2 games. I don't think they would lose them both, but they could lose one. Now, if they bring their A game, if they play like they should be able to take care of business in these games. But I do think both of these games will wind up being competitive, and Rutgers definitely going to have to play good football to win both of them. So those are your 3 easier wins, all in the non-conference. And then you go to the conference schedule. Really, they're not going to be favored by much, if at all, in any other games. You've got Iowa and Washington. I think they're going to be about a touchdown underdog in both of these games. These will be tough. Washington I have in a tier just above Rutgers. Iowa have a couple of tiers above Rutgers, but that game's at home, so it gives them a better chance. But yeah, those will be games that'll be tough for Rutgers to win. They're going to need to pull off an upset if they're going to win one of those games. And then we've got Minnesota. They're in the same tier as Iowa, but that game is on the road, so that one becomes even tougher. I think Rutgers probably is about a 10-point underdog in this one on the road. So 3 games that they could possibly win, but it'll be tough to get victories in those games. And then you've got the games where they're going to be big underdogs. Oregon, Illinois, Ohio State, Penn State. Now, Illinois is a tier 2 team because that game is on the road. it actually bumps that into the red, and you can pretty much count these 4 games as losses. So if you've already got 4 losses on the schedule, again, it's going to be tough for this team just to get to a bowl game this year. Purdue and Maryland, those are your 50-50 games. Those are the games that you've got to win. Purdue, Rutgers in a tier above Purdue, but the game is on the road. That'll be a tough one. Maryland in the same tier as Rutgers. Rutgers really needs to win that one. These will be tough, but very winnable games, and really games that could go either way. So for Rutgers, you got to win your 50-50 games. You got to take care of business in the non-conference. That gets you to 5 wins, and then they got to pull off an upset, and that's just to get to a bowl game. They will have to pull off one upset at least just to get to a bowl game, and that's going to be tough. Now, the odds would say that they're probably going to, if they lose all the games where they're underdogs, Ohio State, Penn State, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, Minnesota, Iowa, that's 7 losses right there. And then if you split the Purdue and Maryland games, you're looking at a 4-8 record, and that is actually what the projection is. So a 4-8 projection for Rutgers, that is very low considering where they were last year. I don't think that is as much indicative of how good this team is going to be. I think it's more about the schedule. This is just a brutal schedule. If we put Maryland in the same schedule, if we gave Maryland this same schedule and we put Rutgers in there in place of Maryland on the schedule, their projection would be 4-8. So it's just a really tough schedule, and I think it's going to be tough for Rutgers to get to a bowl game. But if they can pull off an upset somewhere, win these 50-50 games, there is a path for them to get to 6-6. So what do you guys think about Rutgers? Do you think that they will get to a bowl game? What do you think the projection should be? Let me know down in the comments below. And just a reminder, memberships are now available if you'd like to help support the channel, help us grow, and get some cool perks. You can become a member today. There's a link in the description of all the videos, and you should also see a card pop up on your screen. But either way, please like, please share the videos, please subscribe, and thank you for watching.